Thank you. Take it away.
Thanks, Ellen. I actually do have some slides to share. I promise I'm not going to kill you all by PowerPoint. Unfortunately, I can't share it, but I can speak without them if you want. That's not a problem. It's saying that host is disabled.
Let me just change that for you. I think I need to make you a host.
In the meantime, while you do that, thank you very much. Actually, Lauren has done a lot of the work for me. I think I could probably slip through to about slide 8. That's my final one with what she's said to date, because she's actually said quite a few of the things I was going to say, albeit in a slightly different way. So I can't see who's in the room, but for those of you who don't know me, and imagine that one or two of you may do, I'm Allison Carrington. I work for Skills Development Scotland, which is a national skills agency for Scotland, but my remit is specifically Aberdeen City and Shire. So most of what I'm going to speak about, although it will have a Scotland-wide meaning, will be rooted in the work that we're doing up here in Aberdeen City and Shire. Is that me able to share?
Yeah, are you able to?
Yeah, I am. I think it's that one. There we go.
Perfect.
Slideshow. There we are. So most of the work that I'm doing is actually, all the work that I'm doing is in Aberdeen City and Shire, but it may have and often does have a Scotland-wide impact or meaning. So what I do is I work in the skills planning and sector development team within Skills Development Scotland. And my role is really to try and be that join up between what industry needs now and in the future with regard to skills, and what education providers provide with regard to skills, so that the two can match up. And that sounds like a simple job, but it's an ever-moving landscape. So we do try to understand the skills demand by speaking to employers through employer engagement groups, speaking to employers directly, working with other groups such as colleges and universities and schools to understand employer need going forward. And I'll give you some details of that as we go on. We then use that in evidence to create some reports such as our regional and sector skills assessments, which are an annual report to try and look at the current state of economic labour market and skills requirements and try and forecast or predict what those might be in the future, depending on where employment looks to be going. And then use that data along with a host of other data with colleges and universities to see if we can influence the provision of skills in colleges and universities. So we want to match that learning provision with the demand from employers in order to deliver the skills that they need going forward. And as you'll understand, to create a course in a college, as Greg Steele, who's going to speak next, will attest to, it's not something that you can change very quickly. Sometimes these courses, there's a lot of basic understanding in them, but you can tweak parts of courses to make sure that they remain up to date and relevant. But it's still an academic year cycle, so courses have to take a little while sometimes to keep up with employers with regard to delivery of what they have. But what we're interested in today is more green jobs and green skills. So SDS actually worked with the University of Warwick's Institute of Employment Research and the University of Strathclyde, and some work was commissioned by them to look at green jobs in Scotland and trying to determine a definition for those green jobs. And the reason that we're looking for a definition of what green jobs are is that if you know what you're looking at, we can then detail and understand Scotland's current and future skill demand in there. So I'm going to share with you a very brief definition of what a green job is. And it's basically something that makes or provides a service that directly benefits the environment. And Lorna spoke about some of those jobs earlier on. But it also helps a company or a person, because remember, a lot of the skills that we're looking at, to reduce or cut its carbon footprint. So we're making that drive towards net zero. So anything that will help to drive company work towards net zero or provide a service that directly benefits the environment could be classified as a green job. They actually come in a number of flavours as you want. There's a number of new and emerging green jobs. That's a need for unique work, that the worker requirements are completely new roles that we haven't yet come across. such as, there's an example here of energy plant operatives or engineering professionals where the roles are completely different than roles that we've had in the past. The majority of green jobs actually are ones where it's a current job where we need a little bit of tweaking with an enhanced skills and knowledge base. So the essential basis of the occupation would remain the same, for instance, in welding or engineering, but there are certain skills and knowledge around that job that you might need to tweak and update to make sure that it's a green job and is actually delivering the work towards supporting the environment, such as, and again here we've got architects, plumbers, heating engineers is one that Lorna and one of the audience members had been speaking about in our construction engineers. There's basic construction skills that people will need going forward, and they won't necessarily change, but in order to understand how we can perhaps install heat pumps rather than gas boilers into buildings, we'll need to understand how we change or upskill people in order to do that. And a green job can also be something that is in an increasing demand. So the work context hasn't necessarily changed, but there's much more demand for those particular people in order to deliver that greening effect. But thinking about green jobs alone aren't everything that we need to understand. So green skills can be across a range of roles, not just in green jobs themselves. So green skills themselves include technical knowledge and expertise or abilities that allow us to actually deliver the green jobs as they are. And I think Lorna made a very effective statement very early on in what she was saying, and that energy specific green skills are not the only green skills that we're interested in. When people think of that green jobs and green skills area, certainly up in the northeast of Aberdeen, energy is the first thing that jumps into everybody's mind, because we are known as the oil capital of Europe, and we obviously have that great knowledge and expertise around oil and gas, and we can use that to start to transition our workforce over to deliver renewable energies. But energy is not the only area where we have either green jobs or green skills. Lorna also attested to the circular economy. So there's a lot of green skills that are required around about the circular economy. Now that may involve some energy specific work, but it may not. It may be also around things such as waste disposal, or it could be renewables. It could be renewing and recycling specific items that we're using. But the circular economy also has a range of green skills that will be required moving forward. But thinking also apart from working, earning a living, we also have a number of personal and societal skills that we need to work on in order to actually drive the region or the country towards net zero. So even if you're thinking of something simple like the circular economy, and we start to recycle things, there's a societal change required in there where we each can play a part. Even if our job is not technically a green job, we can start to recycle things or buy less or throw out less food, learn to cook, things like that, turn the heating down a couple of degrees at home. All these things can actually work towards delivering net zero. Thinking about skills that we're going forward, so some of the conversation early on spoke about skills that might be required to be delivered in schools, and I'll come back to schools in a moment. But what we're starting to think of now is there will be a number of new skills that are required going forward, either because they're new in current roles or because they're new in new jobs that are going to come about. But there are certain skills that we've named meta skills that are going to be required no matter which job our young people or our returners or whoever are going into in the future. And we focus them or categorize them here into self-management, social intelligence, and innovation. And these are the types of skills that people are looking for, regardless of the type of job that people are going into. And we're trying to encourage youngsters to gain these skills as go through school, college, and university. And people who are past school, it's basically to engender lifelong learning requirement in people, make them curious, make them problem solving, make them able to communicate well and work part of a team, adaptivity and resilience around that ability to change their job as they move forward. Because there's one thing we do know is that jobs are changing, and they are changing relatively quickly, and people have to be able to keep learning and keep adapting in order to keep up with those changes that are coming about. I think in the last slide here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and address some of the questions that came about earlier on around how we start to get people and support people into those jobs as they come about. So one of the things that my job is that's very important that my job does is understanding what industry wants. And I alluded earlier on to speaking to industry through industry groups and various different fora to understand what they want with regard to skills going forward, and use that information to inform the educators, both the schools and the colleges and the universities, training providers. But also it's very important that we inform careers guidance professionals, so either guidance teachers in schools, careers information student people in schools, people who can give careers information on the high street, for instance, SDS's drop-in centres, places like that. It's very important that they are kept up to date with all the new types of jobs and roles that are coming out as we go into a much more greening of the economy. And we're doing a lot of work up here in the Northeast to make sure that the regional economy and what's required for that is fully understood by our careers guidance professionals. We work with our careers information, advice and guidance colleagues in SDS. We work very closely with guidance teachers in schools, with our developing the young workforce team, to make sure that they are aware of and understand the types of roles that are coming forward so that they can share that information best with school students. And we don't just do that by talking to them, we support them in arranging visits to industry, visits with industry. One example of that is we recently had Offshore Europe here in Aberdeen, and there was an excellent session that was actually set up between some of the energy companies and some of our careers guidance professionals, where we took a number of individuals in from colleges and universities, staff, not students, in from colleges and universities and schools, and our careers guidance professionals to speak to the people offshore Europe and understand what it is that industry is doing going forward, and to understand the range of careers that they are offering. And we do that across a range of sectors, not just within energy. So we work with those education providers to make sure that what they are providing is both agile and dynamic and employer and evidence-led. So it's really important that the skills and training that they're delivering is led by evidence that we are getting from employers as to what they actually need going forward. We also work to provide some support for businesses. So if you think about businesses that are currently working for it, I'll take the example of our construction companies, for instance. They might want to upskill or reskill some of their staff if they're wanting to go back to retrofits and buildings, for instance. So we do find support for funding for training. We can link them with education providers. We can have support for companies that are wanting to move into the region with regard to inward investment, for instance, to make sure that companies that perhaps want to move into the Northeast or other areas of Scotland, it would be the same would work for those as well, so that we do have support to help to train individuals and companies as they come into the area, and that can help drive our economy forward if businesses know that they're going to have that talent pipeline coming through, both from the schools and the colleges and universities, but also from returners going back into work. And it is important, as was said earlier on, that much of the focus for getting people into those roles is as wide as possible. It's not just a case of making the gender balance of male and female, but we also do a lot of work to try and support people that are maybe care experienced or from different ethnic backgrounds, or perhaps with a disability, into various areas of work that businesses may not otherwise have considered taking these members of staff. So we try to enhance that diverse workforce and make sure that everybody around society can benefit from these myriad of new jobs that are coming around, and that wealth is spread around our regional economy. And we're thinking about support for that regional economy. We have recently in the region developed our regional economic strategy. We've updated it recently to reflect the region's contribution to the National Strategy for Economic Transformation, which is a government strategy that was published just last year. We've recently updated our regional economic strategy to reflect that by saying what we're going to do as a region to develop that. That's around supporting that transition from oil and gas and supporting the workers to transition from oil and gas into renewable energies, but also to diversify the economy and make sure that we have enough skills and jobs and support for business to diversify into our other key sectors, such as life sciences, food, drink and agriculture, tourism and digital technology, all of which have green elements within them. And it's important that we make sure partners understand those green elements within those different sectors. And on the back of that regional economic strategy, we also have, or are in the process of developing, a skills plan to support delivery of that economic strategy. And again, we're working with partners across a range of organisations, further and higher education, the schools, developing the young workforce, Department of Work and Pensions, Scottish Enterprise. There's a range of different people in there, all working to support the development of that skills strategy and drive forward the delivery of the skills to our regional population to help them take advantage of these opportunities as they come forward. And as Lorna has said earlier, there are going to be thousands of jobs and opportunities coming up. We just have to make sure that we are there providing the correct skills in order to support people at all stages of their career, whether they're entering straight from school or further on, to take advantage of them as they come along. I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. I'm going to stop sharing if I can work out how. I don't often use Zoom. There we go.
Okay, thank you so much, Alison. That was really helpful. I can take up a couple of questions and then move on to Greg, and then if there's any at the end, you guys can mop up.
Okay.
So, Jeff, or Chris, if you can stop share recording, please.